Hi, and welcome back to Wrench Wench Worx. I'm so delighted that you came back. So I kind of want to kick her all off by introducing you to the shop management team, as well as all my little mechanical helpers here. You may notice that my machine tools are perhaps on a much smaller scale than yours. And I just want to remind you that size doesn't always matter, because if you know how to use it and get the job done, you're going to be completely fine. So I use mine predominantly for education as well as prototyping, but you may have a larger machine tool or a different make or model at your place, and that's completely okay. There's going to be different nuances between the machine tools, but a lot of the theory and a lot of the setup and application stuff that we're going to discuss is going to be very similar, if not the same. If you do have any questions, my husband says I'm supposed to say drop your likes and comments down in the comment section. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them my way. If I don't know the answer to something, it's a really good learning opportunity for me as well. So what I like to do is try to find the answer, so we're learning together. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out with any questions that you have. I will also put my website and contact information in, I believe, the comment section, or I think I'm supposed to say my bio. Oh, and I'm supposed to say something about hitting the little ring-a-ding bell or the smashing one of the buttons. So go ahead and smash that button that you're supposed to smash if you like this so far. And if you don't like it, no pressure, but maybe you'll come back and find that you want to smash that later. That's perfectly fine with me. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my little friends. Okay, before we get to the machines, I need to introduce you to our shop management team. The gentleman with the gray and handsome salt and pepper beard is Diesel. He's 9. He's been with me for about 7 years, and Clutch is the newest member of our admin team. We just got her this spring from an awesome rescue down in Texas. Their major function is to keep me company, keep me busy, standard management stuff, pass judgment on me when I mess up, right guys? All right, we'll get on to the machines. Say hi, guys. And weighing in at approximately 600 pounds here is my good buddy, Oli. Oli's a CNC mill, which means he was designed predominantly for chowing on metal. The reason he can do that is because his construction from head to toe, or from his spindle to base, is predominantly cast iron, which means he has a fair amount of oofta for his size. Speaking of oofta, he can also on his table carry approximately 1 Jenny, which is about 150 pounds. The other thing that you probably want to know is how far can he move? And we're going to kind of touch travel just a little bit here. So you probably hear the term travel or work envelope, which for all intents and purposes just means how far can Oli move his slidey bits in every direction that he moves. So when you hear the term axes, x-axis in Oli's case is going to be left to right, and he can move 10 inches in left to right. His y-axis is front to back, and he can move 6 1/4 inches or 6.25 inches. And from head to toe or up and down, z-axes, or if you're in Canada, z-axes, can move about 10 inches. The other thing that I want to touch just while we're kind of just doing a quick overview is you'll notice here that I've got a safety cap in here, but at the end of the z-axis is a spindle. Now, spindle is basically, just think spinny bits for now. So a spindle is what actually holds the tool, or the part that's going to be cutting your material. And you're going to hear terms like feed rate and speed rate. So when you think about feed, it's how fast you're feeding through the material. On Olaf, he can go about 135 inches per minute in X and Y, and in Z, about 110 inches per minute. As far as how fast he can spin that there tool, he can spin it at 10,000 RPMs. Which, just so you know, is way faster than I can spin with my head on a baseball bat at a family reunion. All right, on to my girl Lena here. So Lena weighs in at a hefty 900 pounds. She's actually a CNC router. She was designed to chow predominantly on woods and plastics, although she does occasionally enjoy dining on some aluminum from time to time. The big difference between Oli and Lena here is that even though Lena has a considerable amount more weight, she's like me. Most of her junk's in her trunk. So that's where most of her weight is, because this table here is cast iron. However, the gantry is aluminum, so it doesn't have quite the vibration dampening that Oli would with his cast iron column. However, she does have quite a bit more travel. So you'll notice this head here and this threaded ball screw. That's going to be her x-axis. So just like Oli, her x-axis is left to right, her y is front to back, and her z is up and down. However, it moves along this bridge or gantry. Her range of motion is in x, 24.75 inches from left to right, in y, 55.75 inches, so front to back, and in z, her head travel from up and down, or z-axis if you please, is 6.7 inches. Other things about Lena is her linear travel, or how fast she can move in x, y, and z, is approximately 200 inches per minute. Her spindle, or how fast she can rotate, revolutions per minute, is quite a bit faster than Oli, which she's cutting a lot softer materials. It's 24,000 RPMs. Now you'll probably notice when you see people doing fixturing or securing their parts to their bed on a lot of other channels, some people just place it on there and it cuts. That is called a vacuum table. I do not have a vacuum table, so unfortunately Lena cannot suck at this time. However, I do most of my fixturing by securing it in with some wood scraps and double-sided carpet tape, because that's how I roll. All right, and this little bite-sized gal here is Helga. She's my little sidekick when I'm traveling and doing workshops. Helga only weighs in at 33 pounds, so she is the perfect companion if you want to throw a CNC machine in your check luggage and do some STEM events. So the thing with Helga is she is just like Lena in the fact that she was designed predominantly to chow on woods and plastics. She is a CNC router. Unlike Helga though, she's actually got a little movement in her hips. So her table actually moves in the y-axis. But like Lena, her x-axis moves from left to right. And her z, of course, is up and down. So as far as capacity, she can move along this gantry 8.6 inches in X. She can scoot her little table 6.3 inches in Y, and she can move her head 2.4 inches in Z or Z. Other things about Helga, she actually has quite a bit of spin to her, maxing out at 20,000 revolutions per minute on the spindle. And she can book it in all three axes at about 120 inches a minute. Like I said, she's not one that I would recommend if you're looking for a lot of oomph, but she's perfect for educational workshops and STEM events. Little shameless plug here, I actually do CNC workshops, so if you do want to book me, feel free to take a peek in my bio, and I will put my website on there, which is just wrenchwenchworx.com. Feel free to book me for a free consultation, and I can see if I am able to help the group that you are looking to educate. All right, last but not least in our little CNC family, I would like to introduce you to my friend Sven. So you probably noticed right off the bat that Sven looks like a horse of a completely different color, and that's because he is. Sven kind of looks like Oli, but flipped over on his side, due to the fact that Sven has a horizontal spindle. That is because Sven is a CNC lathe. What's the difference, you ask? There are some very prominent differences. So if you recall from the mill and the routers, we take the cutting tool and we put it up in the spindle, and the cutting tool actually rotates as it carves out the part. Not Sven. Sven is different. Sven is unique. Sven actually takes the workpiece into his spindle, turns the workpiece down, while a stationary, non-rotating tool glides in and across the part to cut the profile. Other predominant difference between Sven and his buddies here is the fact that Sven only has 2 axes. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, poor Sven, what a bummer. He only gets 2 axes? That's not fair. Sven really only needs 2 axes. So you're probably wondering, well, which axes did they remove? Well, Sven does not have a y-axis. But like the other machines, his z-axis is from the spindle nose to the opposite direction. And in this case, his x-axis is the tool carriage axis, and that moves in and out. So the x-axis on Sven is 4 inches, so it can go all 4 inches total travel. The z-axis actually has 10 inches of travel. I'm thinking, wow, 10 inches, that's a pretty long part to spin in this little guy. And you are right, which is why we've got this little doohickey here. This is called a tailstock. What's a tailstock? Tailstock is actually just there to support the tail of the end of a longer piece. If you don't have a tailstock in there, I want you to kind of envision like putting a 1-inch workpiece in here and hanging that out 10 inches. That's a pretty significant amount of hangout, especially on something that's only about that big. What can happen is, especially on softer materials, if you get it whipping around at the max RPM that Sven is capable of, which is 5,000 RPM, that material can actually bend. And the next thing you know, that unsupported material is whipping around like a wet noodle, and it can be a major danger. So rule of thumb, typically, I mean, my rule of thumb is 3 times the diameter of the tool. Some people will go up to 5. But for example, if you're putting in a 1-inch workpiece, 1 inch in diameter, and you are hanging it out more than 3 to 5 inches, you're going to want to go ahead and give them some support on the backside there. Other considerations is the fact that if you do have a part, and even if it doesn't start whipping around, you're going to get what's called deflection. So it's going to want to kind of push in because you have some leverage. Think of like a pry bar, and you're pressing into it. It's going to want to push into that workpiece, and you're going to be out of tolerance before you know it. Other things about Sven is you'll notice here in his spindle nose, he has a collet. A collet is basically, and we'll get into collets later, but just for all intents and purposes right now, a collet is actually a piece that kind of hugs the workpiece, and you tighten it up back here and it secures it, just cinching all the way around it. Well, you're probably thinking, well, gosh darn it, that's not a very big hole. You can't hold a very big piece in there. So with the collet system, you can hold about 1 inch to 1 inch and 1/16. If you want to hold something a little larger in diameter, then you're going to need the assistant from my friend Chuck. And there are many different flavors of Chucks, and we'll get into that in a fixturing episode. But I did want to let you know that there are other options for work holding. That's a whole new beast in itself. So other things that you probably want to know is when you're looking at lathes, you probably see some terminology like swing over bed, swing over carriage. What does that mean? So if you recall, this is the carriage, the part that carries the tool along in the x-axis. It also moves across the bed. This is the bed in the z-axis. So if you have a larger part in here and one of your friends, Chuck, what's going to happen is if the part's too big, you're going to go ahead and smuck right into that carriage. So they have a number called swing over carriage, which goes from the center line of the spindle to the top surface of this carriage. So in this case, the largest part that you can hold is going to be 4 inches in diameter under the carriage. Well, why 4? Because you have 2 inches of clearance, while 4 is just the diameter. And remember, you're swinging half and you're going from the center line. So you have 4 inches max stock that you can swing over the top of that. And over the bed, you've got 8 inches total swing. So you can hold a piece that's 8 inches in diameter, but you only have 4 inches of clearance from the bed to the center of that spindle nose. And I do apologize if I'm a little rough on this one. So full transparency, most of my career has been in 3 to 4 axes equipment. And I didn't do a lot of lathe work in most of my career. So Sven and I are still kind of getting acquainted. I am really looking forward to it though, and hopefully we'll get a chance to learn some stuff together. Thanks.